Welcome, listener, to today's episode of the Black Business Roundtable. I am your host, Doug Blacksher, broadcasting to you live from the city of Diversity, Oakland, California. We are coming to the end of March and Women's History Month. Yet, we should think of every day as Women's History Month as they struggle through tears, pain, perseverance to bring each and every one of us into this world. Look at the latest sister, Ketanji Brown Jackson, nominated by the President of the United States, Joseph Biden, to the highest court in the United States, and how she kept cool, calm, and collected no matter the despicable, rude, disrespect coming from those on that particular committee. As Michelle Obama eloquently stated, when they go low, we go lower. Oop, no. I'm just joking on it. When they go low, we go high. And I want to reiterate that phrase because it's critical that, and Dr. Ashley will tell me all the time, when they go low, you do the right thing. So I'm going to rephrase that and say it again and emphasize, as Michelle Obama said, when they go low, we go high. Women are moving us forward. Reminder that the Women's Council of Associated Real Property Brokers are hosting two events in April. The annual Power of Prayer breakfast is April 2nd, 2022, this Saturday, 10 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. at the exclusive Sequoia Country Club in Oakland, California. They celebrate two events, Fair Housing Act of 1968 and Democracy in Housing. Hashtag 2022 Realist Week. Now I'm going to do a quick sidebar on that. We don't have to introduce any more legislation or laws for equal opportunity for people of color, specifically Black. All we need to start doing is enforcing the existing laws on the books. And I utilize that law we just cited, which is the Fair Housing Act of 1968 and Democracy in Housing. And in contracting, when I talk about the $500 million that's spent on government contract and only 0.32% goes to African American, those federal dollars under Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, if we would enforce those laws, these cities, counties, and states, and federal government, if that's the case, would have to enforce the existing laws that are already on the books. Thank you. They are also hosting the brunch, they being the Women's Council of Associated Real Property Brokers. They are also hosting the Brunch and Learn April 7th at 12 p.m. with Kamal Hubbard, my brother, the cryptocurrency guru. Kamal will be discussing blockchain and cryptocurrency and the effect in the real estate industry. This event is free and lunch is included and is being held at, oh, here you go, Dr. Ashley, Soul Slice. Call 510-460-0248 and go to Eventbrite for tickets today. Once again, 510-460-0248 or go to Eventbrite for tickets today. Dr. Ashley, I wish you were coming. I wish you were in town because, girl, I talked to Chef Carter and he is going to hook it up. I'm going to work out the night before. We ask for your support of Michael Thrash at his next court appearance, April 4th, 2022, and he will be on the show a week from today, April 7th, 2022, with an update. It takes a few clicks via your social media to post the hashtag, and that is Driving While Black, Michael Thrash, Taylor County TX, and TX is for Texas, and hashtag the city of Abilene in Taylor County TX, and that's Texas, mayor's office, and national and local news outlets. Attach our podcast link from October 14th, 2021, listed in today's podcast description online, or see link below on screen, which is, and it's below. I will read it out for you. And also share the following hashtag: Stop School Bullying, Crane County TX 2022, and bring attention to the plight of this mom trying to help all students of color at this school, especially now that the NAACP and the feds have got involved in this racist situation at a school in Texas. A special thanks to our sponsor. Visit Chef Carter Lewis of, wait, Dr. Ashley, Soul Slice Restaurant and Catering in Oakland, California. The Save Your Spot are filling up quick for their spring season catering services. Easter, Mother's Day, and graduation. Events located at 5849 San Pablo Avenue, Oakland, California, 94608. Their website is soulslice.com, and telephone number is 510-849-7689. Tell them that the Black Business Roundtable sent you. Props out to our next special sponsor, Magnolia Engineering and Construction, for their continued support. And we congratulate Tammy Willis on being a minority, woman-owned engineering and construction firm. Visit their website, magnoliaengineeringandconstruction.com, to learn more about Tammy Willis. Now, Tammy Willis, you own an engineering and construction company. You sit on the BART board as an auditor, and not the one where the sister was removed by a group of white people. You also sit on the executive board of the Oakland African American Chamber of Commerce, and you're the president of the Women's Council of Associated Real Property Brokers. Sister, I am just proud to know you, and you are setting the bar so high. But sisters, as we end this month, you sisters are making a difference. And you know the sisters that I'm talking about. I'd also like to acknowledge that my viewpoints on this Black Business Roundtable are not those of the Oakland African American Chamber of Commerce. I want to say that again. When I spout my viewpoints are from Doug Blacksher, Black Business Roundtable. So I want to clear that up because I've seen that above. And I said, well, I don't want them to get my viewpoints in the Oakland African American Chamber of Commerce perspective confused. So thank you for allowing me to clear that up. Today's show highlights. Tonight, we will discuss Oakland politics, which never cease to amaze me. In addition, we have two of our previous guests returning to discuss incarceration and the toll on mental health going into prison. Dr. Ashley, you're going to be questioned today, sister. I hope you got rest from last week because we got some questions for you. Good questions, though. Prison not only affects the incarcerated, but the family they leave behind. and the mental anguish which accompanies that loss of a loved one, possibly for life. And audience, can you imagine what that does to the children? The children saying, Dad was here, Mom was here, now they'll never be here. Dr. Ashley, that's going to give you something to think about. Mm-hmm. Wow. We will also discuss a case close to my heart that began November of 2019 in North Carolina in a life sentence given this past February to a young African-American Black man. Our guest today, hey, Lord audience, I got some good news for you today. I have some great news for you today. Dr. Ashley, you ready for this?
I'm ready.
Our weekly check-in with our very own Dr. Ashley Coleman, immediate past department chair, and you ready for this, audience? Now tenured assistant professor of psychology at University of the West. Congratulations, Dr. Ashley, and welcome. And I'd like for you to say a few words on this wonderful news. Wonderful news. Audience, listen to this. Go ahead, Dr. Ashley.
Thank you, Doug. I am overjoyed on this last day of Women's History Month to be promoted and have an opportunity to continue to mentor the next generation of emerging clinicians. And I'm still processing this idea of celebrating the journey. So there's some shock and awe, and I stand on the shoulders of giants and have been supported by my parents to go for it. And so I'm just grateful that I'm still kind of squeezing the ball, pinching myself. We squeeze the ball even when it's good stuff. There we go. But I'm really, really grateful and excited. So been at the university since 2015 as an adjunct. Wow. And so it's been one ride. So still processing, but very grateful.
Before we move on, Dr. Ashley, I want to say humbly, congratulations, job well done. What you do, what you bring to this show is invaluable and it is increasing the quality of life of our audience. Audience, when you see a doctor of psychology, when you see a Black person and a doctor of psychology, you know that she/he/them will give you the mental strength and health that's needed to be promoted like Dr. Ashley. No, but needed to do your best in life. Because just like you'd have a broken leg, you'd go see a doctor. Just like you would have a toothache, you'd go see a dentist. When you have issues in your mind, don't be proud and sick. Go see a doctor and get well. Thank you and congratulations, Dr. Ashley. We appreciate it.
Look at me. You got me smiling and crying. Thank you.
We love you too. Our next guest, John Jones III, formerly incarcerated, now an advocate transforming his community by channeling his experience and expertise on issues related to criminal justice reform. And audience, you are not going to want to miss this show. John has some information for those of you who have people who are family members, men or women, coming out of the state prison system of California. He has some news that you will not want to miss tonight. Our next special guest, Saabir Lockett, a former gang member from Los Angeles County, sentenced to life in prison at the age of 19 He changed his life in prison through obtaining a college education and fought for and won his freedom after 21 years. Can you imagine that? He got down and said, you know what? This is not going to beat me. I'm going to beat it. I can't wait to have Saabir back and John Jones. Janani Ramachandran, Esquire, will return in April as she kicks off her campaign in April the 9th. She is running for District 4 in Oakland, California. See her website at Janani4, and that's FOR, Oakland.com, and her new Instagram at Janani4, and that's the number 4, Oakland. Now, for the national political highlight and several elections. Midterms are May 24th in Georgia. Watching closely, our guest from February 24th, Marcus Flowers, my brother, is a brother, proud Army veteran, husband, father, and patriot. He is a Georgia Democrat running to unseat Marjorie Taylor Greene. Keep contributing people so that he can out fundraise Marjorie Taylor Greene. And I'd like for you to Google this Congresswoman and see what a spectacle and how embarrassing she must be to her constituents as Congresswoman of that great state. Learn more on Instagram at Marcus4, and that's the numeral 4, Georgia, or his website, Marcus4, and that's FOR, Georgia.com. His new yard signs are ready for District 14 residents. Knock on doors and phone banking today through April 30th, 2022, and meet Marcus. He's a terrific brother. You remember Dr. Ashley? I was so inspired realizing that we are now getting candidates, black, white, man, woman, or other, or them, that's going to be representing, not these get paid while their constituents get played politicians who are taking our tax dollars and running amok with this government.
Very true.
Learn more, his yard signs are ready for District 14 residents. Knock on doors and phone banking today through 4/30/2022. That's April 30th, 2022. And meet, once again, Marcus. Virtual Town Hall, April 7th at 6 p.m. Hashtag One Georgia. And that's one O-N-E, Georgia. Senator Raphael Warnock, a Democrat, helped flip Georgia blue along with Senator Ossoff. I want to make sure someone corrected me on his name, Dr. Ashley. Along with Senator John Ossoff, is running again for the U.S. Senate. He is a pastor, advocate, Savannah born and raised, and Morehouse College alumni. Learn more on Instagram at Raphael Warnock or his website at Warnock4, and that's FOR, Georgia.com. Hashtag One Georgia, and that's O-N-E, Georgia. Stacey Abrams, a Democrat and woman of color, is running to unseat Republican Brian Kemp for governor of Georgia. And to quote Stacey Abrams, opportunity in our state shouldn't be determined by zip code, background, or access to power. Learn more on Instagram at Stacey Abrams or her website at stacyabrams.com. And once again, hashtag One Georgia, and that's O-N-E, Georgia. Val Deming, a Democrat, is running for the 2022 Florida Senate seat. If you would like to stay updated on Team Demings, text the word JOIN to 77076. This woman of color and former Orlando police chief is seeking to unseat little Marco Rubio, a Republican in Florida. Little Marco Rubio, pack your little bag, put your little Kid Martini shoes on, and scurry on up out of there. Dr. Ashley, that is almost as good as squeezing my ball. Val Demings' hashtag is never tired. Once again, her hashtag is never tired. Learn more on Instagram at Val Demings or her website, valdemings.com. Now, for the news of the day, Dr. Ashley, and I love saying that. And Dr. Ashley, we're gonna have to double up on the conversation. I'm gonna learn how to be quiet today because last week my heart was beating fast, and I'm sure some of my audience probably said we're gonna have to take some Prozac after listening to that, brother. Dr. Ashley, please take it away.
Absolutely. Thank you, Doug. So on this day, March 31st, 1914, and again, this news that I'm going to share is courtesy of the Equal Justice Initiative. The calendar is available by visiting the website calendar.eji.org. So on this day, a white mob lynched Marie Scott in Wagoner County, Oklahoma. And the tagline, actually, the headline was Mob in Oklahoma Hangs Negro Woman. So on March 31st, 1914, a white lynch mob seized a 17-year-old Black teenage girl named Marie Scott from the local jail, dragged her screaming from her cell, and hanged her from a nearby telephone pole. Days before, a young white man named Lemuel Pierce was stabbed to death while he and several other white men were in the city's, quote, colored section. Marie was accused of being involved in the murder. The Associated Press wire report and accounts published by Northern papers explained that the group of white men had ventured into the Black residential area to sexually assault Black women and attempted to rape Miss Marie Scott. According to some of these accounts, Marie stabbed Pierce in self-defense. In others, there were accounts that Marie's brother killed Pierce in an effort to defend her, and Marie was only arrested and lynched because her brother escaped. Local press reports, on the other hand, didn't say anything about why the white youth were in the Black neighborhood or what they did while there, and simply claimed that Miss Scott stabbed Pierce unprovoked and in cold blood. And for generations of Black women, racial terror included the constant threat of sexual assault and a complete lack of legal protection. The same communities that lynched and legally executed Black men for the scarcest allegations of sexual contact with white women regularly tolerated and excused white men's sexual attacks against Black women and girls. And given this history, Ms. Scott may have been among the many Black women targeted for sexual violence during this era by white men that knew that they would not face any judgment or consequences for rampaging her community. Whether she acted in her own defense or was protected by her brother, Ms. Scott died at the hands of a mob, the victim of a society that devalued her life and body, deprived her of the chance to defend herself at trial, and denied her the right to be free from rape, terrorism, and racial violence.
Audience, I have to comment on this. If we were first-class citizens in this country, because I don't know any country in this world where they're second-class citizens. You're either free or you are a slave. In light of this story, and I'm going to be brief, Dr. Ashley, but that just rocked my core. A woman was defending herself against a mob of white men who were trying to rape her. And, you know, I can't even say the rest. So I'm going to just say this, audience, we need to have this government start defending the laws, holding up the laws that are already on the books, whether it be Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, requiring fair distribution of federal dollars to all contractors, whether black, white, woman, veteran, Asian, Hispanic, but fair distribution of those federal tax dollars, or housing, or just having a judicial system that is not that's designed to put black men and women incarcerated for crimes that they did not commit, or they don't have the money to get a good attorney. So I'm going to stop there because I'm trying not to get too long-winded. We have a long show today, a great show today, Dr. Ashley, and I can't wait to get these brothers on. Once again, and I think we're right on schedule. Once again, next up, our weekly check-in with our very own Dr. Ashley Coleman, Doctor of Psychology and tenured professor at University of the West. Congratulations, and take it away again, Dr. Ashley. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. And I'm really looking forward to hearing John and Saabir, having them back on the show. It's going to be wonderful. I'm still reflecting on their comments from their first visit of the show, where they really both highlighted the importance of mental fortitude and having a vision, keeping the faith despite what the environment looks like. And I just want to share that also is where my mind is in thinking about the journey. So the first thing is, for those of us who read the Bible, you hear guard your heart, but I really want to encourage our audience to think about guarding your dreams, guarding your visions. What we can do, we can't control necessarily the environments we find ourselves in, but considering what is your self-talk, what is your tone of your self-talk, what are those hopes and dreams that may seem very unachievable to those around you, whether you're in a literal prison, whether you're in an environment where you have dreams that maybe your loved ones around you or before you or your classmates haven't, don't think that that's possible for them. How are you able to hold on to those dreams and pursue it and encourage yourself? And I think what stood out to me about what Saabir and John said last time they were here, and I hope they really expand on it, are their sources of what they did to keep the hope alive for actually being able to be free in the future. And that hope that they had, the desire to be free, that motivated. So those thoughts, I can do this. This may be a long shot, but I'm going to go forward anyway. I'm going to fail forward. I'm going to pick myself up. That our thoughts motivate our feelings and motivate our behaviors. And yes.
Audience, and I have to piggyback, and I didn't mean it. I don't like to interrupt you, especially when you're giving out therapy. But what you said is so critical. Mm-hmm. If you don't fight, if you don't try, you will lose before you even get started. So if you can elaborate, just say that one more time, Dr. Ashley, coming from you. But so many times our people will say, well, you know what? It's never going to work. It's not going to. You got to have that. Yes, I can. And look at me. Yes, I can and I will. Okay. Sorry, Dr.
Yeah.
As you say, I need you.
But that feeling of doubt happens because it's painful when we fail. It's painful when we fall down. And there has to be a recovery period. And recovery means returning back to a former state of health or ability. And so when we are beat down, or when we have had experiences where something hasn't worked out, we're afraid. And each time it takes courage to try. But in guarding our minds, we also have to think about who we're letting watering our dreams. I know I appreciate the congratulations, but this idea of, for my personal journey, starting off as an adjunct, teaching one class while trying to finish a dissertation and living on loans, and this idea of feedback about why would you go and apply for the full-time position, becoming an alternate. I laugh about that. I was third choice. That worked out for Jordan, by the way, for the Hoopers that know the 84 draft. But the idea of being counted out and being from Oakland and being like, it's okay that we're underdogs, we keep going. But this idea of being also guarding what your dreams are and only allowing those that are around you to pour into you positivity and hope. And if you don't have that external support, how can you give it to yourself in those quiet moments? So just thinking about what your self-talk is, what motivates you, can you try again? What do you want to go for? What have you given up hope for? But there's another opportunity to lick your wounds. It's not failure. It's just, again, another opportunity to do something with more experience and knowledge. And so I'm just so excited to hear more about how these brothers were able to actually, I won't say turn their lives around. I'll say that they were actually able to become the men that they were destined to become. Right.
And I want to piggyback off that. Without that experience, they wouldn't be great leaders. So sometimes you need experience, whether it be good or bad. You can always be a great leader after you endure and overcome. Thank you, Dr. Ashley.
Thank you.
Dr. Ashley, can you give our sponsors a quick break? And we're going to immediately get into the story about this young man in North Carolina. Thank you.
Absolutely. So thank you, Mr. Donnie Glover of BlackUSA.News. And be sure to tune in to Chapin Friends on Mondays, Party Marty Let's Talk on Tuesdays. A special thank you to our first sponsor, Magnolia Engineering and Construction. The vision is to further the presence of Black women in the construction and engineering industry through key partnerships and building contracts in the municipal, government, and transportation sectors. And an invitation to our listeners, if you would like to join our advertising family, send us an email enclosed with your company name, address, website, phone number, and social media page. Please address that email to bbrt2021@hotmail.com.
Audience, let me be clear. In May, we are heading up to 1 year, and the BlackUSA.News network, they need you. They need your advertising dollars as we grow. One of the things that I would like to briefly say is, without Donnie Glover's vision and consistency in making sure that the real news get out in Black America, I would be sitting here, and neither would Dr. Ashley. Thank you, Donnie Glover. I want to share with you the story of Carlton, residing in Raleigh, North Carolina. Another railroading of a young, educated, newly rising, successful Black entrepreneur that has just received a life sentence after sitting in jail for just over 2 years. Please listen to the backstory on Carlton. And if you are moved by this young man that I personally have known since his childhood, won't you please donate so his mother can reach the $20,000 goal to secure the best research legal defense firm to press for an appeal for Carlton. The link to his video and PayPal can be found on the online show description on YouTube and Facebook. We will be bringing you updates as we get them regarding status of Carlton and donation. Dr. Ashley, can you please read this story of this devastating uh, 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 impact, not only to this young man, but to his family and friends? Thank you, man. We can only say so much because it's in appeals right now, but thank you, Dr. Ashley. Take it away.
Sure. Carlton is a young Black college educated man who was a proud business owner living and doing what he passionately loved to do, drawing and mastering the art of being a professional tattoo artist in Raleigh, North Carolina. In November 2019, an altercation between Carlton and one of his employees occurred. Faced with a life or death situation from this individual, Carlton had no choice but to not only defend the business he had worked so hard for, but also his life. Carlton was licensed to carry, own and carry and conceal a weapon for a handgun. The unfortunate victim, because he had been in an extensive criminal record, was not licensed to own a gun, but had physical possession of an AR-15 assault weapon shown to the jurors. The weapon was loaded with 75 rounds, physically ready to kill Carlton and anyone else in his spraying path, evidence offered to the jurors. Carlton, on numerous occasions, attempted to de escalate the conflict and asked the individual to leave his shop. The person refused to go and was heard threatening to kill Carlton. After the shooting, Carlton did not run from the police or attempt to escape from what happened, but was voluntarily driven to the police station and turned himself in to authorities that same night. While no one wants bodily harm to anyone, the fact is, North Carolina is a stand your ground state where licensed gun owners do have the right to protect their lives and their properties. On numerous occasions, the public defender assigned to Carlton's case urged and made attempts to pressure him into settling, taking a plea, and serve almost 20 years in jail. However, believing that he was justified in what he did, Carlton did not take the plea deal and insisted on a trial where he thought he would receive a fair opportunity. We know Kyle Rittenhouse, a white male in Wisconsin, killed two people, injured another, and was seen openly on camera carrying out these acts. He walked out the courtroom as a free man, yet on January 26, 2022, Carlton was sentenced to life in prison without any possibility of parole. It is the belief that the system failed Carlton Harris with the prosecution's far reaching charges: first degree murder. According to North Carolina laws, Carlton premeditated, plotted the entire situation, which the evidence proved this was not the case. In addition, the unpreparedness of the public defender assigned to his case, Carlton did not meet with any attorney to prep at all before the trial began. And the day of the trial, the lawyer was still asking for him to take the plea. Because the system failed Carlton, I am hopeful that as a community, we will not. We have identified one of North Carolina's best appellate attorneys who has expressed, based on his experience, that there is a strong case for an appeal. We as a family community need to raise $20,000 to cover court attorney costs. While this amount sounds like a lot, we have faith that God will bless us in reaching this goal. Please donate what you can to help us free Carlton from the injustice he received and not be forced to serve his life incarcerated. Please assist by not only praying, but donating and sending your contributions to the PayPal account. And in his mother's words, also, she noted James 1:12, God blesses those who patiently endure testing and temptation. Afterward, they will receive the crown of life that God has promised to those who love him. Back to you, Doug.
Dr. Ashley, I apologize for having my arm raised, but my hand raised, but I have to ask, did you say the man was going to his car and get a weapon that had clips that had 70 bullet clip? Okay. And audience, I want you to hear this from Doug Blacksher, Black Business Roundtable. That is why it is so important that you get out there and vote, because your district attorney has a big hand in prosecuting Black, white, Asian, and others. They have the discretion to put you in jail or give you a fair trial or fair shake or review the evidence or say there's not enough evidence. Your district attorney, whether it be here in Alameda County or in Raleigh, North Carolina. So your vote does matter. And in this case, if there was a district attorney out there who was looking at all the evidence, maybe this young man would not be spending life without the possibility of parole for defending himself against this bad actor. Audience, I ask for your prayer for Carlton and his mother and his father. Once again, audience, I ask for your prayers for Carlton and his mother and father. I ask you, if you are moved by his story, to pass on the video link of his, and if possible, donate as any amount is welcome to assist Carlton's parents in their appeals effort. He was brought up in church. So to his National Christian Prayer Warrior family, Carlton needs your support via prayer letters and cards and encouragement and donation, as any of these are welcome. We also understand there was a victim here that died, and we acknowledge the pain of that family also feels from yesterday, today, and into tomorrow, into their tomorrow. Dr. Ashley, can you take us to a sponsor break? And we want to immediately get into our warriors who are making a difference in our community. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Donnie Glover of BlackUSA.News. Audience, be sure to tune in to Black USA Crypto News with Kamal Hubbard on Fridays, as he knows all about blockchain and cryptocurrency. Visit Chef Carter Lewis of Soul Slice Restaurant and Catering in Oakland, California. The Savior spots are filling up quick for the spring season catering services. So please visit Soul Slice for more information about your Easter, Mother's Day, and graduation events. Located at 5849 San Pablo Avenue, Oakland, California, 94608. Website, soulslice.com. Phone number, 510-879-7689. Please tell them BBRT sent you. And just a quick aside, Doug, I have to let you know that one of my dear friends rubbed it in my face that she's tasted the food at Soul Slice, and her family's from Mississippi as well. So I'm getting it from every side. I can't wait to get down there and get my oxtails. And also learn more about Tammy Willis, owner of Magnolia Engineering and Construction, by visiting the website magnoliaengineeringandconstruction.com. They want to be a part of growing with the beautiful community of Oakland, California. Connect with Magnolia Engineering and Construction now on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And finally, to join our advertisement family, please send us an email to bbrt2021@hotmail.com. Please don't forget to enclose details about your company's business as well as social media page. Back to you, Doug.
And audience, let's be clear here. We, and I say we, West Coast, Atlanta, Little Rock, Arkansas, Chicago, Baltimore, New York, Florida. We need each and every one of these big towns and cities to start creating a list of Black restaurants. So when we travel, we don't spend our money in places like McDonald's, and we don't spend our money in places like Burger King, and some of these other places which promote and fund racist elected officials. We need to spend those dollars in restaurants that stimulate the economics in our own community. And I'm going to say that again because we're way ahead of time, Dr. Ashley. When you travel to Oakland, I want you, and you know anyone traveling to Oakland or LA, and I'm going to ask Dr. Ashley to help me out with this in the LA, find out where are the Black restaurants, because they need your business.
Mm-hmm.
They need, and there are many Black businesses when you take vacations to other cities, whether it be business or other, and they would appreciate your business. I know in Oakland, you can check with the African American Chamber of Commerce to get a listing of Black restaurants. Mm-hmm. And believe me, they are reasonable, and the quality of food is just as good, if not better, than the white-owned business establishment. And that's not taking anything away from white-owned business establishments, but our Black economic base, where it relates to construction, and the disparity showed here in Oakland showed that Blacks only get 1.4 million out of $500 million, or the restaurants in these neighborhoods and these cities and these counties and these states and in the United States. Those dollars that you're spending in those white restaurants could help create our own chain of Black-owned restaurants. I humbly ask that you look into that when you're traveling from state to state, county, city, etc. Thank you. Now, considering and Dr. Ashley, we got a few extra minutes. Would you like to elaborate? Or if not, I'm going to light it up, girl.
Are you ready? I think we have one of our guests ready to rock and roll. John is ready to come on, and Saabir is going to join us in a few minutes.
Let's light it up, Dr. Ashley. Let's welcome our guest, John Jones III, with Boss. Now that's a name. Mm-hmm. Well, if I had a name, if I work with a company and they said my name was, I work for Boss, with Boss, Director of Reentry and Violence Prevention Programs, and Saabir Lockett, Director of the Faith Alliance for a Moral Economy. Fame! Dr. Ashley, can you read Mr. John Jones III's bio? Thank you.
Absolutely. John Jones III is a devoted father of 3 and third-generation East Oakland resident. John is on staff with Building Opportunities for Self-Sufficiency, BOSS, where he serves as the Director of Reentry and Violence Prevention Programs. Formerly incarcerated, now an advocate transforming his community by channeling his experiences and expertise on issues related to criminal justice reform, police accountability, housing, employment, and public safety. After being unsheltered and unemployed for 18 months, John became involved within his community. Community involvement turned into organizing, advocacy, and empowerment. John shared his personal testimony through his story of pain, trauma, faith, and transformation to inspire young people and fight for policy change. John has worked at the local, regional, and state level for ballot measures, much needed programs and services. As a result, John has received a number of awards and accolades, but most importantly feels proud to help make his hometown of Oakland a safer and vibrant place for all. Welcome back, John.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me? Mm-hmm. Okay. Am I the only one? When you hear these bios, I don't know. I get a little embarrassed. Like,
man, let me tell you something. If you don't, my daddy always told me, if you don't wag your tail, it's a mighty poor dog that won't do that. Good to see you, John.
Good to be seen. Glad to be back on the show.
Thank you. And I really appreciate you coming on today. And our next guest, which is number 1, 2, we got 2 number 1 guest speakers. Saabir Lockett. Dr. Ashley, can you please introduce this other magnificent gentleman, man who made a difference, and the type of networking John and Saabir made a difference in both of their lives. Dr. Ashley, please. I'm so excited. Wait a minute, where's my stress ball?
Get your ball. Get your ball. He's excited.
Stress.
Absolutely. Saabir Lockett is a former gang member from Los Angeles County sentenced to life in prison at 19 years of age. After several years of perpetrating the same criminal behavior which led him to prison, he underwent self-help therapy, acquired his GED, graduated from college, and earned his paralegal license. His drive and determination ultimately led him to challenge his conviction, resulting in his release from prison 21 years later. Today, Saabir Lockett is the director of the Faith Alliance for a Moral Economy, FAME, an initiative of the East Bay Alliance for a Sustainable Economy, a mayor-appointed commissioner for the city of Oakland, ensuring that formerly incarcerated people have a right to job access, inclusion, and upward mobility. He is also a community advocate and activist, leading groundbreaking strategies to improve the conditions underserved communities of color, and a certified mentor for the formerly incarcerated. Saabir, welcome back to the show.
Hey, how's it going? Welcome to be back.
Great.
Man, I look at you two, and I'm like, hey, we could take on any army. I throw them things up there because you guys are fighters, and I love it. On our last show with you both in February, I think it was the 28th of 2022, the first question we discussed, your past path, current life, and your hope for the future. Due to some extenuating circumstances with someone close to me being sentenced to life in prison, I can wrap my head around this injustice. Dr. Ashley, read a few minutes. Dr. Ashley read a few minutes ago.
Mm-hmm.
When both of you heard of that courtroom, in that courtroom, that you were going to prison, what was that moment like, as you only have the first time moment once? And John or Saabir, whichever one you want to answer first, take your time. We got plenty of time. Thank you.
And can I just acknowledge how both of you are taking the breath, and it's been a while since you've had, I imagine, that question, but I just, for our audience that has the visual, just want to acknowledge, if we feel anything in our bodies, it's okay breathing through that. And sometimes it's just a moment when we're brought back to a place and it can be real. So just want to acknowledge both of you taking your time and easing into that question. We breathing through that, right?
Indeed, 100%. It's definitely psychosomatic.
Yes.
You know, we constantly, they talk about addiction and like why addiction is so powerful. It's because the brain can acknowledge situations and circumstances that you previously went through, and the body will have an impact. And you're naming that impact, and then I think going towards like with the topic, I mean, why we even having this show right now, and a young man been sentenced to life in prison, or a man been sentenced to life in prison, it reminds me of not only the sentence I received at 19 years old, that I was never going to come home or never hug my parents and never see my little brothers and sisters grow up. Not only that impact, but the trauma I had to go through each time I went to the board of prison terms under a life sentence. I was also denied parole 7 times before taking the initiative to fight for my case. And like you said, go to school, learn law, and then eventually won my case in the Supreme Court. It's constant, the once you're locked up, it's constant that you will always, or the system is designed, or this world is designed to remind you, or to try to belittle you, oppress you, so that you can suppress yourself into believing that you're this degenerate of society that don't deserve a second chance. And every chance they get, they try to remind you of that. They remind you of that inside. They remind you of that when you come home. with these laws designed to continually convict you over and over and over again. So I think the heart of like the question is, you know, it goes beyond just the sentencing day, but how many times must you feel convicted in this system that we live in, right? This unjust system. It happens over and over again. And just going back to that psychosomatic experience, and we go through that every time. You know, every time we think about it, every time we're faced with law enforcement, every time we're faced with some form of injustice that seeks to criminalize us, recriminalize us for some past wrongs we've done, as if we don't have the opportunities to make change, right? To evolve as individuals, to learn, to grow, and to become better people, and contribute to our society in positive ways. That reconviction happens.
Wow.
Can I say something real briefly? I'll piggyback off what you said, Saabir, and I'm gonna be brief. That's kind of funny coming from me. I won't be brief, but I'm gonna be brief. It is so important, audience, that the judicial system in the United States is designed to destroy the Black man once they get him in the system. I know personally of a white person, of many white people, but of a personal white story where someone got caught up in the judicial system, and when they got out, they got a good paying job. They weren't ridiculed. And when a Black man with a PhD can barely get a dishwashing job, but a white man with a lifetime sentence get out of jail, he can be president of a company. There's a problem in this country, and that goes to where I said we must start electing politicians that are not going to create new laws and legislations on the books, but they're going to start enforcing the existing laws. Because Saabir and John, let me tell you from the bottom of this show's heart, the Black Business Roundtable, you two gentlemen are icons in this community, in this city, in this county, and the state. And now that this show is across the country and in several other countries, in this world, Craig. Go ahead, guys.
Yeah, thank you. And I appreciate Saabir going first, because as Dr. Ashley, you pointed out, there's some things you think you get over, but then you never know. Like you can share ours, you know, Saabir and myself, we can share this experience 99 times, and then you never know when you get to number 100 and you feel it. So I appreciate that, because I was feeling it. And for me, just that experience being in the courtroom, I was 16 when I was arrested for my role in the drive-by shooting that led, unfortunately, to a homicide. So I was tried as an adult. So by the time I was sentenced, I was 18 years old. And for me, the biggest takeaway was the process, right? How the system operates. First of all, it was just very dehumanizing. It was very abrupt. It was rushed. I didn't get the sense that, first of all, the judge, Saabir, we just talked about this, right? The judge didn't even look at me one time. The judge could have just been reading stats from his favorite baseball team, as far as I was concerned. There was no sense as he's saying things like, I'm sentencing you to 26 years to life. I didn't get any impression that he understood the gravity or magnitude of that, right? This judge is tasked with issuing sentences that is removing someone from their family and their community for a long amount of time. I even said the same thing was true for the victim's family who was present in court. There was no sense that we're talking about human beings, regardless of what happened. It was just a system, similar to like a slave auction, right? They just bidding, okay, $800, okay, put the next person up there. It was in, it was out. And I'm just like, wow, what just happened? Right. And the thing for me also is just the utter sense of powerlessness. You know, you are subject, when you're dealing with people in power, whether it's a parole board, a judge, a prosecutor, I like to remind people, first of all, we're dealing with human beings. So what does that mean? Human beings are more than capable of being flawed, and definitely more than capable of having a bad day. So we're really subject to the mercy of how their morning went and how their night went before. Did they argue with their partner? Right? Was their breakfast burnt? Like, these are real things. And when you're in that bullpen, you be asking people who go in before you, hey, what's the mood like? You know, how's the judge? What's going on? Sometimes they're in a good mood. You're like, yeah. But if you got a hanging judge and you see that person come back, with their head down. This is before we go in the courtroom, right? So we already being traumatized before we're sentenced because we're reading the energy of other folks who are going in there and being sentenced as well, right? And you really don't have much space to share. I mean, the entire criminal system is not geared for you to have a voice, right? They say have your public defender or whoever the case may be. And if you got a public defender, their chances are they're overworked, and they're human beings too. I mean, some of them are horrible at their jobs. Let's just be honest. They're overworked. They're just trying to push a deal off on you. You're like, wait a minute, what about my side of the story? So just to be in a situation where your life is directly and immediately impacted, but not being in a position of empowerment to fully advocate for yourself, to lobby on your behalf, to provide mitigating situations, right? We're reduced to a two-dimensional document that states whatever the case may be. You allegedly did this without the, well, here is what really happened, right? And I would say for me in particular, I end up because for me, I took a deal, and my deal was to go to the California Youth Authority, but they gave me a prison sentence and had me on a bus to go to prison when I was supposed to be going to the California Youth Authority. So it took months just to clear that up. And then the public defender was like, oh, he should be in YA. My mom like, no, I'll just let the county jail. So it's all these things that are happening, right? Full speed, rapid. And you don't have the ability to slow it down. And it's like, what is the recourse? So that's just a part of it, right? But that's the piece that really just came up for me now in this moment as we're talking about that. Somebody even share with my own kids, like, you don't want to be in a position where you're giving somebody else power of your life, especially somebody who do not look like you, who's seen a lot of people who look like you and just threw their life away and didn't lose no sleep over it. That's the cold part to me.
Indeed.
You know, gentlemen, I want to briefly go off script and ask this question because, Saabir, I met you on a DA's race 4 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. John and Saabir, you both know there is a critical district attorney's race here in the county of Alameda that for the last 40 plus years has been held by people who don't look like the people on this platform here. Can you tell our audience how critical the district attorney is in the direction of a Black person's life? If they don't look like us, you're gonna get kicked in the butt. If they don't have an understanding of people who look like us, you're gonna be on the bus. So explain that briefly. Thank you both, gentlemen.
Oh, for sure. I think it comes in two parts, right? It's something that, like, I appreciate what John had to say in so many different ways, because as you notice, like, I didn't actually express how I was impacted because I was also processing. It's easy to, you know, look at overviews versus dealing with that heart space. And, you know, and at the same time, like, it's one thing to talk about these things as an adult with some reflection. It's quite different being 18 and 19 years old, sitting in that courthouse, and then you have an outward perception that you're trying to maintain amongst your peers and also your family. You know, your family is hurting and crying, and you know, you're trying to stay strong for everyone, and you don't even know how to be strong for yourself, and don't even understand, like, us. I know for me particularly, I was breaking down inside, and I just didn't know what to think after receiving life in prison. I mean, honestly, I had the bravado, the attitude that, yeah, I got this. This is nothing. I'm with the homies. You know, you're inside. You're trying to maintain this whole image because you don't want to appear weak and soft, you know. And then, but late at night when you sit in that cell by yourself, you know, there's a whole nother feeling. There's a whole other thing that happens. And that goes towards what John was saying about the hopelessness, you know what I mean? The despair, you know, and there's no system in place. There's nothing in place to hold you, to care for you, right? There's nothing in place to hold you and care for your families, the victims' families. You know, it's like, what is there to say that these are human beings who are suffering? Everyone involved, right? And that spirals you down a track. So if there's no, you know, for me, there was nothing to hold me dear and near. So I went straight downhill. Straight up. You know what I mean? It was the outward perception that led my actions from the moment I was sentenced until I decided that my life needed a change. So just wanted to name that piece. But I think the DA is very important because the DA decides who's going to get sentenced. In both me and John cases, we were under 21 years old. You know what I mean? It's like they have laws that came out to say without relevant experience in your life, you don't have the rational judgment making skills to make certain choices. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And you taking about young brothers coming about and sisters coming up out the hood that doesn't have like these broader experiences. So our decision making is limited in a lot of ways. You know what I'm saying? So the DA have the power to charge you or to not charge you, to charge you as an adult, to send you to camp, to send you to YA, or alternatives. What about alternatives to incarceration in general? What about addressing whatever the mental health issue may be? What about addressing the thing that's causing the kids to have this outburst of violence? You know, this, you know, the community that they're raised in, or the home that they have to live in, the drugs and stuff that we're seeing in our neighborhoods that's shaping the mind, that's causing a young kid to like adapt to a certain lifestyle. You know, can we address that and then say the child has some ailments and then send them to counseling? Can we have some, you know, anything other than jail? Jail is not going to make no one better. That's what people understand first and foremost. Jail, for it, the people that succeed after incarceration made a decision that I am no longer going to kill and destroy myself. You know, I'm no longer going to murder my intellect when my heart and my mind telling me I should be doing this, but I'm going to do this, right? And I'm going to cause myself greater destruction. You have to make that decision that I am going to do something different and succeed, you know, but it wasn't the incarceration that did it. You know what I'm saying? It was the self-reflection that caused the change. You know what I'm saying? So we can't possibly, to the DA is important because the DA, he, she, whoever it may be, we currently have Pamela Price running for Alameda County District Attorney, and it's very important because she's a civil rights attorney and she's also very progressive and care about community. Therefore, we have someone in this person who will actually adhere to the concerns and needs of the youth to make a difference. And that also applies to adults as well. You know what I mean? Again, the DA changes the whole script. If the DA said we are not going to prosecute, send youths to jail, and we're going to provide alternative school programs, or let's start to reinvest funds in some services that's going to give them avenues of counseling and therapy, that is what we actually need. And then it takes someone that knows and is close to the people that can relate to it.
But John, before you give your opinion about the DA's race, I just recently got a call from someone very close to the two DAs who are running for district attorney in Alameda County, and I quote, one DA said, "I don't want any kind of youth program because that's the DA would lose money if we stop putting young people in jail." And I'm going to, audience, you're going to want to stay tuned in because I'm getting that person to come on this show and specifically say who the DA was and how they can put in their mind that we don't want any programs to help the young people. The DA's office make money off of that. So I had to put that out there, and we will be following up on that DA's name in the near future. John, please.
That's right. No, it's all good. I'm going to share, before I share real quick, I want to answer a question I've seen. I ended up going to the right place I was supposed to be sentenced to, but it took 6 months. I was supposed to go to the California Youth Authority after I got sentenced in April, but they had me on the list to go to prison, to San Quentin. So it took 6 months to clean that up. So for me, it may sound strange, but I was blessed that they actually got that correct, because they could have put me in prison. Then you get lost in the system and anything can happen. So I did want to appreciate that question. And the DA is, the position of the prosecutor is so important for so many reasons. And I'm going to start with one that Saabir was just talking about. In fact, it just hit me today. First of all, everyone, my birthday was yesterday.
Oh, happy belated. Happy belated.
Thank you. So I was just thinking, here it is, March 31st, 2022. Literally 30 years ago, on this day, I was sent from juvenile hall to Santa Rita, the county jail. And why this relates to the prosecutor, because again, it starts with they have the power to charge someone as an adult. And it's interesting because I'm 16 years old. If the prosecutor at that time did the proper assessment, it's no wonder in the world I should have been viewed as someone deemed worthy of being tried as an adult. My criminal record didn't reflect that. If they did the assessment, they'd have understood that I was, academically bright in the midst of a community that was being horribly impacted by the crack cocaine epidemic. None of these factors came into play. It was just, this person's gonna be tried as an adult. So when I turned 18, the very next day, they sent me to Santa Rita. But there was another white guy that was in there, and he was almost 19 years old, and they kept him in juvenile hall. And it's a big difference between being in an environment with young people as opposed to now, in a matter of minutes, I'm being transferred to an environment with people that is more than twice my age. People who have served more time in prison than I served time alive. And that was a radical change to go from juvenile hall to maximum security unit in Santa Rita. I ain't talking about blues. I wasn't in the blues. I wasn't in minimum. I'm in maximum, right? So I just wanted to share that. So I'm gonna give us some data real quick. They did a study. 95% of all the prosecutors in this country are white. 79% are white men. So when we see injustice take place, I always say that it starts with who is the person in the courtroom and what is the impression as it relates to the prosecutor or judge. For example, if it's little Timmy, that might remind them of their nephew. They're going to be a little lighter on them. They're not going to view them the same way. But if they someone who look like myself or Saabir, they've already been programmed to look at us a certain way, and they already bought into the program to maintain looking at us a certain way. You feel what I'm saying? So that is how the system works. It's a proximity issue. And even when I went to the youth authority, I was seeing white guys in there, similar circumstances, but was not tried as adults. Some of them got breaks. Some of them were getting deals, right? So that is so important. We got to look at who is the makeup of our prosecutors. They are the charging instrument. If you ever go to court, when it says the state of California versus John Jones III, and I'm thinking, what the hell did I do to piss off 40 million people? Right? They claim to operate on the basis of the people as the people's representative. But are they themselves representative of the communities we come from? The community that's most marginalized by police brutality and mass incarceration. So it's very important. And I share that with people. And I want to connect judges too. Yeah, this is across the nation. 95% of all prosecutors are white. 79% are white men. That means just 5% of the prosecutors are people of color. And we know that folks of color make up a majority of folks who are incarcerated. So again, we are being charged, and the prosecutor is taking the information from law enforcement, and they can add to it, right? They can take away from it, or they can add to it. More often than not, Saabir, they're threatening you. Take this deal. If not, I'm going to add these charges. I experienced that. It's literally blackmail to a blackmail, right? So they hold a tremendous amount of power. Many of them eventually go on to become judges. So there's more of a relationship with the prosecutor and the judge as opposed to a public defender or a criminal lawyer. So that's not really fair or equity from a legal standpoint. They're too closely aligned. And here's the last piece, because again, police brutality. Who is the charging instrument? Prosecutors. More often than not, they are not charging these officers, or they're not finding them guilty, despite the evidence that we're seeing these things happen in real time, right? We see these things happening. And they either fail to charge or they fail to do their due diligence to get the conviction. They don't apply the same amount of effort and energy that they would do with Saabir or myself. So these are just some of the reasons why folks really need to be focusing on these DA races, not just here in Alameda County, but every county across this country.
I want to.
Oh, go ahead.
I just want to jump in to really underscore the importance of the prosecutor to also answer the question about what are the deciding factors of when children are being considered or being tried as an adult. And so in March 2000, California voters approved Proposition 21, the Juvenile Justice Initiative, in response to highly publicized media reports to criminally street gang activity committed by teenagers. The law allows prosecutors to decide whether a minor at least 14 years old may be tried as an adult for certain defined crimes. Now, here we go. We're going to hear the word prosecutor several times as our panelists are saying. So currently, minors ages 14 to 17 may be tried as adults in a California Superior Court through any of the following procedures. A prosecutor may file a petition for a fitness hearing in juvenile court. If the juvenile court judge finds the minor unfit for rehabilitation, so that is an estimation of the future, the minor will be referred for prosecution as an adult. There can also be a direct file in an adult criminal court at the discretion of the prosecutor, or an automatic trial as an adult for certain predetermined aggravated offenses for an eligible minor. So again, we keep hearing prosecutor and judgments being made. Another comment asked about the mental health assessments here, and as I'm hearing the laughter, right, of what is that, what is the mental health facilities? There's such an absence of presence of a whole person assessment, again, underscoring the humanity of all involved. And so also I just wanted to jump in to say a few things. One, we talked about psychosomatic symptoms. I want to honor the book, The Body Keeps the Score by Dr. Basil van der Kolk, who's an expert in trauma psychology and talks about how our bodies, Saabir, you acknowledged this, and so did you, John, when you talked about taking a moment, but our body holds memories even when we don't, even when they're suppressed, repressed, our body keeps the score. And we know for Black and brown people, there can also be somatic complaints, headaches, stomach aches. We're also looking at literature of autoimmune disease and how compact psychological stress, compact trauma, and that link to the increased vulnerability for development of physical symptoms. So that's why it's really important to go to the doctor and then also consider therapy. Okay. And then again, I also just wanted to acknowledge how both of you talked about this theme of discarding. Here you go. Here's a sentence. Here you go. Get on the bus. There you go. How did you reclaim and hold on to your humanity after each year and after each, Saabir, you talked about a repeated denial at the parole bar. How did you hold on to your humanity?
You know, there is so much to talk about here. I mean, this can go on and on and on. I look forward to another show that we can dip in some of these other areas that's coming out to me, especially when it comes to youth and assessments of youth. In the first show, I talked about coming up in the time of the watch riots, you know, coming up at the time of the crack epidemic on our Black communities and the devastating effects that it had. You know, I talked about, you know, the emergence of gangs, you know, the player, you know, mentality that influenced my decisions. So when a child at 16, 17, you know, 14, any child, right, is trying to get an assessment, that child isn't being assessed. That child's environment is being assessed. That child's parents is being assessed. That's what's being assessed. So that's why I chuckled a little bit about that. It's not a laughing or joking matter, but it's impossible to do a mental assessment of a 16-year-old kid. I mean, you want to say, is he stable enough to drink a glass of water or eat food? I mean, what are you trying to assess? He's stable enough to know like right from wrong when this child have not had to pay bills. This child has not been impacted in the ways necessary to get the algorithms popping in his brain to know like this is the right decision to make as an adult. You know, we trying to assess children as adults. Like what's meant by that? I would challenge that itself. But when I grew up, it was no assessments at all. You was assessed, as John said, on a piece of black and white paper. And the police said this, the prosecutor said that, and then that was your assessment. They didn't care about anything else. But maintaining my sanity is how I would call it. Incarceration. It had a lot to do with the care of my family. It had to do with the fact that As a kid, I had grandmothers that loved me. I had a dad that loved me. I had a mom that loved me. I had people in my life that cared about me. So no matter how far away I maybe ventured off from, right? I think our heart and our souls always know what's right, but our brain drift away a little bit, right? But so no matter how far my brain drifted off from my soul and my heart space, there was always that returning to what love and care that I could return to. You know, I had people in my life that visited me. I had people in my life that took the initiative to ask me about my day, whether it was in letters, whether it was coming visiting me, whether it was sending cards, whether it was sending me money for commissary. Like all these acts of affection reminded me that I was more than the situation, and that I did have a family and caring people that I could get back to. So no matter how much they try to throw dirt on me, I tell a story sometimes when I'm doing my mentoring, right, with formerly incarcerated. Or I would say returning citizens. I'm trying to get out of that word, formerly incarcerated. But the thing is, like, imagine, like, for me, I was a bird with a broken wing, right, and I got put in a hole. I couldn't fly out because my wing was broke, and they decided they keep throwing dirt on you, right? But what we have to do is, because the love of your family, the love of returning back to knowing that this is not a place for you, I just kept shaking the dirt up off of me and stumping it up under my feet, right? Eventually, I shook so much dirt. Oh, you're a criminal. You're a gang member. You're a degenerate. You're worthless. You're never going home. You know what I mean? I shook all that off of me. And so many times that eventually I was on level ground and I just walked away. You know what I mean? So that's how I like to get it, right? Because we need the love of our families. That's what helped folks who are incarcerated. I don't care who it was, whether it was a caregiver, someone that was close to that caregiver, somebody in that person's who was incarcerated life need to be connected to that person to remind them you are bigger than that situation. Do not fall up under a state of despair and trauma and suppression, not oppression, suppression, right? Like, don't begin to oppress yourself in that system because they're trying to break you down. And we need that line of connection. That's what helped me through all of that, was the love of my family that cared about me. And when I asked for help, was there to help me. When I needed money to pay for school and do correspondence courses, that stuff wasn't cheap. I graduated from Oregon State. You know what I'm saying? They were there, right? And it didn't take one to do it. It takes a village to heal our community. You see what I'm saying? It took multiple people in my family saying, he's trying to do better and let's do better for him. So let everybody chip in on this college tuition and make sure he get these books.
And let me say something real quick off of that, because I've heard so many people say, man, I'm going to prison. I don't call me, don't write me. And that's what we're going to ask in a future episode if we don't have time today, because I've heard so many people say, man, I don't want nobody writing me, calling me, because I got to be tough. So I want to table that question for our staff person in the back. But I'd like to ask you this, and either one of you can answer, because we have some great questions here today. And let me tell you guys something. You guys are empowering so many of our brothers and sisters, and I'm going to use your term, Brother Saabir, returning citizens. Returning, that is amazing that you came up, and I'm going to use that if that's okay with you. Our returning citizen, not formerly incarcerated. That's outstanding. But let me
that's perfectly fine. I think you should also adapt look and dive into the word rehabilitation. Right. You know, you're talking about conditional factors that cause people to make certain decisions, and then you talk about rehabilitate. Well, did he have the ability in the first place? What are we trying to rehabilitate? It's more like assimilate if you're talking about the system. You're trying to into a system to further weaken you so you don't actually act in your true voice, right? You can't take the pain from that struggle and make a difference. You just, I'm out of that system and I forgot about it. When what you see in Mr. John Jones and myself is people that then said, no, I am all that I've been through and I'm going to tell you about it and we're going to make a difference.
Let me ask you both this question. When you were escorted from the courtroom, were you remediated back to jail, how long after that courtroom sentencing was it before you each reached the actual prison? And how is the prison you are to serve your time decided by the legal system? Thank you, gentlemen.
Oh,
Yeah, I'll go. And let me share. I want to share. I'm going to answer this question, but I do want to share my thoughts on the previous question because I think it connects. To withstand, first of all, we have to be clear. No one healthy is being arrested, right? We're not coming from healthy environments, right? We're coming from environments that failed us to begin with, that led to things like criminal activity. And then we're placed in a more toxic environment. There's nothing positive about incarceration whatsoever. From top to bottom, left to right, up and down. Personnel, staff, people on the inside, it's all very negative. And in California, particularly, the most racist environment I've ever been in was locked up, right? So you got all these forces and factors at play. To me, the determining factor of one's ability to navigate that, really, I will condense it on the term of mental fortitude. It requires that in a way that you can't imagine it unless you're in it. It is the most difficult environment to try to turn your life around when you have, as you mentioned, Doug, there's some people who give up, right? They say, well, you just took my life, you took my freedom. There's nothing for me, right? So what got me through, I'm gonna call it the 4 F's, family, right? It takes someone to believe in you, even when you don't believe in yourself. I share about my mom all the time. My mom always told me, she said, son, your latter will be greater than your former. I used to say, easy for you to say, because you end up in here eating these top ramen. But she had a sense of belief in me, and her consistent presence in supporting me put me in a position to where I couldn't isolate and just think selfishly. I couldn't adopt a woe is me mentality, because I also was seeing firsthand how my mother was also she was also sentenced. My family was sentenced. I'm the oldest of 5. So my siblings were sentenced from being denied access to their older brother. My sister's a year apart. Think we were close. So when you go to someone for advice and support, to not have that. So for me, I knew that I had to do everything I can to honor my family. The second F is foundation, because a lot of people don't have family. A lot of people don't have foundation. I was, again, blessed with a single mother who did the best she can to raise us. She gave us a sense of values that was not always in congruence with East Oakland, because my mother's from Louisiana. So they had their Southern ways. I was like, Mom, that don't fly out here. This is the city. You still got straw in your hair, or you got cotton in your fingernails. That don't work out here in the hood, right? But the point is, she gave me a sense of being, a sense of belief that allowed me to withstand. Again, when I'm trying to do the right thing and people say, oh, you should be doing this or doing that, I'm like, I don't care what you think I should be doing, because you in here just like me, right? But that's easy to say. Everyone's not in that position. Here's a third F. So we got foundation, we got family, faith. If you do not believe your circumstances can improve, then guess what? They're not. It's not. Saabir mentioned his situation, going continuously to the parole board, being denied, fighting. You have to believe, not based on evidence that you can see, because faith is based on evidence of things unseen. When everyone around you, when I was in prison and I was working on my appeal, I did my prison time in Washington State. They said 2 things. First of all, nobody wins their appeal in Washington. And number 2, you definitely don't if you're Black. Right? I believe the state of Washington is like 5% Black, but the prison population was like 20%. It was just crazy. Right? But I had a sense of belief that I was not going to allow anyone to allow me to not believe that change was possible. Because to me, to not believe is to give up, and I refuse to give up. So you have to have faith, no matter what it looks like, no matter how long it is. Shrink it. I did my time one day at a time. They was telling me when I first went, they said, by the time you get out, they're going to be having flying cars. I couldn't think about that, because I would not be able, from a mental health standpoint, get through my day if I was thinking about the things I didn't have. Sometimes I have to shrink my day down to, look, Saabir, just get me to lunch. Can I just make it to lunch without going off? Right? Sometimes you have to shrink your day and do what you got to do. I play these games with my mind. I break down time. I say, look, get me through the next 90 minutes. And I'm checking up. Okay, 5 minutes went by. You got to shrink things down to make it manageable. And then here's the last F, fortune. The incarcerated experience is not monolithic. Everyone have different experiences. I was fortunate. As a Black guy from East Oakland to where I already had a social network of folks. So there was already a sense of just automatically being down. I want to say this real quick, because when we say things like gangs, I want people to understand, don't allow the media to dehumanize what that is. A gang is simply a social unit. That's what it is. It's a sense of belonging. That's what it truly is. They use it in a criminal standpoint, but this is part of our culture. African people, we're tribal people. Just like a lot of our brothers and sisters in the brown community and even the Asian community, we're tribal people. We're not clannish. We're not just Kennedys. We don't socially isolate. We have a sense of belonging with each other, but they focus on the more extreme negative actions of these social unions. They try to make it all encompassing of what it is. So I want to be clear on that. You need that, even on the inside. You need people who you can trust and who you can rock with, because nobody is meant to walk alone. We're social creatures, right? And that's what I mean by being fortunate. Everywhere I went, I was fortunate. I was fortunate to be in positions to take advantage of opportunities, to take advantage of programs. I was working, making more than minimum wage when I was incarcerated, right? That's a blessing. Everyone don't have that. Most people just making 10 cents an hour. But here's the last thing I want to say too. Some people are not fortunate. Sometimes it's a matter of luck. It's a matter of who you would be assigned to as a cellie, as your cellmate. Some horrible things going behind their wall. I know everybody don't want to hear it, but don't think it don't happen. I'm talking about abuse on every level. It happens. It happens. You can be in a situation with someone that steals, right? So then you go, whatever, lead a cell, come back. This person stole from you. So now you got to do what you got to do. Then you just added more time to your sentence. There's people who do all kind of stuff in there. So for me, like I say, it's just a matter of also being fortunate. It's a combination of things. But at the end of the day, it's really about mental fortitude. And so as I wrap up, so for me, as I share, I did 2 stretches. I was incarcerated on both. So I wasn't, free and then went to court and got sentenced and got locked up. No, I was already inside. So you already prepare yourself. They always say, you hope for the best, but expect the worst. So you got to like mentally prepare yourself. I already knew that, okay, I'm going to be going to prison. So let me make that mental preparation now. And then the first time was 6 months because they messed up. The second time was less than 30 days. And to be honest, for me, that was a good thing because I wanted to get to fresh air. Like when you're in a county jail, you're in a box. You don't really have access to fresh air. The type of food, your privileges are greatly increased when you're in prison. If I can say that sounds weird, but again, to use the word privilege. When I went to prison, I was already incarcerated, right? So it wasn't my first time. So it's different when it's your first time ever being locked up. Because then, you don't know what you don't know. So, of course, there's anxiety, there's fear, there's worries. But sadly, Saabir said this, the brain can normalize things. So at this time, I've been arrested, almost 24 times. I was just like, hey, just tell me when stow day is. Like, seriously, when is commissary? Right? You've already made the preparation. I already know what to expect. I've already been through this. And I've seen some of the same people in the county. I'm going to see you in there. It's that kind of thing.
Yeah. I would say the exact same things that John I think that last piece is really, really important. You're already incarcerated. And you can be on the streets and you're still incarcerated. I think we're talking about growing up in the hood with the expectation that I will go to jail and it's okay. Right. And I think I would take it a little further to say juvenile hall. If you look at the juvenile justice system, when a kid acts up in juvenile hall and go to the hole, you know what they do? They go to a box, literally a box with nothing, nothing. You may be lucky to get a Bible. I'm talking about a kid, like a juvenile. You can be 10 years old, you know what I'm saying? Let alone 16, 17. When you go to YA or camp, right? It's like a matriation, right? You go to hole for infraction. You got weights in the hole. Oh, so now you can work out. You got radios. When you go to the prison and go to the hole, you got a TV. You got a radio. You got yard time with other people you're playing with. Like, you're already incarcerated. They incarcerate the youth before you even get there. So by the time we on that bus trying to get to prison, we like, yeah, because we got freedom. As much freedom we's gonna have as being incarcerated. I think that's a deep subject. Sorry, Judge.
No, I have to ask you this because white America, you need to hear this. what is the ratio from both of your perspective as it relates to Black and all the other groups that are incarcerated when you guys were serving time? And we look like we're doing really good on time. I think I had one more question after that. We're going to free flow after that. But considering the statistics continuously show that if you got 5% population, as you just indicated, John, and you got 20% of the population in jail is Black, there is a problem. You cannot tell me that Black people are committing all the crimes. So when you guys were incarcerated, in relationship to the Black, white, Asian, and other, what was the ratio of Blacks versus, and you can either break it down from your perspective, from Blacks to whites or Blacks and all others. What was the ratio, if you can elaborate on that? Thank you.
The majority are Black and brown, period. But I would say it was a difference in some of the institutions I was at, because I was in Pelican Bay, I was in Corcoran, both Pelican Bay SHU, Corcoran SHU, Tehachapi, all level 4 penitentiaries, one step from death row. And in those environments, they're very violent. They're very violent. Toxic masculinity runs supreme. If you're the baddest, you're the toughest, that's what's going to have you surviving. So the guards, and they're very highly, when we talk about gangs, there's one thing to talk about street gangs. It's quite another when you talk about prison gangs, where it's death. I mean, ain't no fighting. It's life and death. If we get into it with you, we're trying to kill you. It's what street gangs are. I mean, what prison gangs are. Even the system recognized that. They call street gangs in prison disruptive groups, unorganized, groups that just fight each other. Then they call prison gangs actually organized crime, which is why they had the SHU terms, indeterminate SHU terms, before that stuff was overturned in Pelican Bay through hunger strikes and things of that nature. And then you would go in this total isolation for being a prison gang member forever. No matter how much time you had, you was by yourself in your cell. So in these environments, it's really critical that there's a balance on the yard, because violence will ensue, and then there's no balancing factor to neutralize the degree of violence that can happen if one group was overrun by another, right? And that was general population. But I will say the police do play a major role when you're in Corcoran SHU, Pelican Bay SHU, when you're in these isolation places in assets, they will play these games. They will unbalance the population on purpose in order for Blacks to be killed. We heard about this back in the days in Corcoran SHU. They were setting up Blacks. They would send northern Hispanics or southern Hispanics. Typically it was southern Hispanics because they have a big racial identity against Black people, right? And then there's a big war between southern Hispanics, Crips and Bloods and things of that nature. So they would put 15 Hispanic Mexicans from southern Southsiders on the yard, and then send 2 brothers out there. And before the brothers, and when you're in isolation, you're handcuffed. So everywhere you go, you're handcuffed till you get to your location. So you get to this location, and then it's this little yard that they let people out to. They unhandcuff everybody. Then they take 2-3 brothers, and then before they can even get unhandcuffed, they open the doors, and then the brothers are attacked by these Southerners. And that's how Blacks are dying in prison. You know what I'm saying? At least in the time that I was in there. You know what I mean? All the time. It can be they was doing this with white people, they were doing this with Mexicans against Blacks. They would out numbers like that and set off the balance so that Blacks could be murdered. And then the police themselves would actually in a riot, and brothers got hands. You know what I'm saying? Just straight talk. Hands. So we could be in the middle of a riot, 4 brothers against 10 white boys and putting dogs on them, and the police will shoot the Black person. You know what I'm saying? There's always the police shooting Black people that wind up dead. in that prison ride. So that's how those racial dynamics play out, at least in some of the institutions I was at.
Gosh, I mean, you know what, guys? You guys are taking my breath away just even talking about being. The next question, and we've skipped the sponsorship because this is just audience. You are hearing the raw story of what goes on in the correctional institutions that our judicial system has designed, from the prosecutors to the judges to even the juries. The DAs pick juries knowing that they're stacking it against Black men and women to go to prison and face death. Everybody's father isn't a district attorney or a judge or a police officer, and I'm speaking Black. And you know who I'm speaking of if you're watching this show and you're hearing what I'm just said. The next question.
Doug, hold on one second. I just want to, for our listeners, because I just unclenched my jaw. I just held myself. Abs are tight because I'm still processing the reinforcement of the graduated pipeline from juvenile hall and this idea of inklings of freedom and this placating, and that my abs are tight. So I want our listeners, if you need to take a deep breath, abs tight, if you know your jaw's clenched or you feel the tension, it's because I'm glad you have your stress ball, Doug. We are hearing these first person narratives. So when we talk about trauma, feeling it in our body, that's okay. We're responding and we should respond. If you're not responding, that's okay. Sometimes we numb or we check out. That's also at times protective. So I just wanted to, just for our listeners, just ground them in what we're hearing. And we're so fortunate to be having this conversation. At the same time, it's still an interpersonal experience, and just wanting to honor that, right? So we're talking about so many different layers. And so when you talk about shrinking down time, that tactic, having to take on a different persona, just all this, it just takes so much energy, intellect, brain power, impulse control, constant decision making, head on a swivel. And so I just want to say that I was feeling that, and I probably haven't took a deep breath since we talked about that. So just wanted to own that.
Gentlemen, and I'm going to say this before I ask this next question. Audience, if you have, and if you're Black, I'm sure you have family, friends, or know somebody who is incarcerated or returning citizens. Thank you, Saabir, for that. Returning citizen. Your support, friends, family, and others, to that person who is incarcerated is critical. Is critical. Gentlemen, how were you able to navigate incarceration and adjust mentally and physically in prison, as it seems there would be a lot of mental compartmentalization? And I know you guys have answered that, but I want our audience to hear that because, like I said, I know someone close since he was a child who just heard, after defending his business and himself with a man who had an AK or AR-15 with 70 bullets in the clip, he just got life without the possibility of parole. So can you answer that question, please, gentlemen? And you know what, audience, these are true men. These are true leaders. These are success stories. Take it away, gentlemen.
I think Dr. Ashley kind of hit it on the nose in her assessment. of the constant fortitude, the constant keeping your head on the swivel. John Jones' head on the nail. I'm a believer in when the truth is said, there's nothing else to be repeated, right? So I'll just regurgitate the knowledge that's already been professed. John Jones talked about fortitude, critical, belief in self. You have to believe that you are bigger than your situation. You have to. It's no ifs, ands, and buts about it. You have to believe and have in your heart the desire to want something different. John Jones, the third, also spoke on faith. Really critical, very powerful statement. Because if you don't have the faith that you can be better than your situation, right? It is all of that kind of captured what my journey was. I mean, honestly, you know what I'm saying? I just knew that I was always going to. I knew once I became conscious of my actions, the impact of my decision making, that I had the power to change my condition. One of the greatest things that happened to me when I was incarcerated was the first time I went to board, right? And they denied me parole. Now I'm sitting there and it was, I don't know, it had to be like a grace of God, honestly, I think, in my life, right? Because this board commissioner said to me, you're sitting here with your long hair, you acting like you don't care, you don't give a damn about your freedom, but you're very articulate. It's like the image you portraying and the words coming out your mouth don't match. So are you aware that you dug this hole? And it's going to take you to dig yourself out this hole. That seed completely changed my life. Because as a person who was serving a life sentence and then also convicted a second time in prison and received another life sentence, I did never believe I was going to go home. That wasn't an option for me. What changed for me was I wanted to help other people. And I naturally fell into helping myself. I just knew I did so much wrong in the world, right? That I have to offset this balance here. You dig what I'm saying? Because I kept suffering. And I was like, I don't want to suffer no more. So I got to start doing some good to balance out this scale. And then let me see what that'll do, right? Because I just kept suffering. And then that naturally led me helping other people, led to me saying, oh, wow. And then this board member telling me what he told me to drop that seed years before. It was like, okay, you know what? I got myself here. I'm going to get myself out of here. And it wasn't nothing under God's green earth that was going to stop that path. Because if I could be down enough to stand on the corner and sell dope all wee hours of the night when people trying to kill me or me, you know what I'm saying, trying to hurt them, you know what I'm saying? Or if I can stand up with my homeboys and do all this violent stuff for nothing, and I can damn sure do it for myself and my family. I can transition the skill beyond negative application and say, I'm going to love myself, care for myself. And by all means necessary, I'm going to use my mental acuity to overcome this situation and outthink anybody that think they're going to outthink me and keep me here. Straight up.
That's right. Oh, yeah, a few things. So I think it's important to share. So there's two parts as it relates to incarceration, right? I think Saabir and myself, we've been talking about the parts that related to our own personal journey of transformation while inside. But I want to be clear, that wasn't entirely representative of the entire time. In other words, what I'm saying is there's things that we were doing before that. So in terms of making it, when you go in after being sentenced, the first word that comes to mind is assimilation. Meaning wherever you're being sent to, you gotta understand where you at, the rules, the power struggles, the power dynamics, the people. There are certain things that you gotta get a feel for. So there's certain things that can happen. I've been in situations to where, for me personally, especially in the youth authority, my thing was always, let me send a message, right? In other words, I'm going to take off first. So I'm gonna demonstrate I'm not gonna be no punk. And then that usually lasts you for so long because the turnover, right? So I say like on average, like 6 months. So until you get to a place to be a little bit more sophisticated. And that's the second thing I want to share too. Being incarcerated, it teaches you how to become a better criminal. You are in close proximity with folks who got all kind of hustles and tricks of the game, and you learn these things. So I got to a point for me hustling. You know, I sold weed, I sold cigarettes. I learned how not to get caught. I was smart enough to not smoke weed and then be in the CO face. Like, that was dumb to me, right? I had my little candle, I had my wax. I had my body oil, and I'll put that on my lamp, and it will make a fragrance, and it would just mask the smell. So I'm saying this for a reason, because you got to get it how you live. You become a product of your environment, and survival is very necessary. And I want to say one last thing too, because I see fight or flight. Let's add, there's fight, flight, freeze, and annihilate.
Mm-hmm.
I see these things happen. That last one, annihilate, we're sitting that in our streets right now, but you definitely see on the inside. That's when you're like, look, anybody can get it. That can happen from, Saabir, hey, when you see a brother get a Dear John letter, when your partner break up with you and they say, this is it, I'm done with you, or you're on that phone and you see people yelling and screaming because their partner is not being faithful or not handling business, you see people go off. So you got to be able to read the room. And I think that for me become these transferable skills that I incorporate here in free society, how I move and how I gauge things. I can see something about to happen. Like, y'all watch out, it's going to go down. Like, how you know? Because you got to know that on the inside. People ain't going to do a bunch of talking. They're not going to be, I'm going to get you. No, when it goes, it goes. The furniture is moving. So all these things become a part of it. And again, you really don't, it sounds strange. And I'm going to say this last thing too. Sometimes the whole can be your saving grace. Right? Sometimes, like, look, man, I just need to just isolate right now. I don't have time to think. It's too much going on. I need time to just decompress and focus on what it is I need to do. Because everything about incarceration is reactive. There's so much going on, noise. These COs too. Oh my God! Let me say this about these correctional officers. I always share this. I'm gonna be very clear in what I'm saying, and I mean this. Abusers, more often than not, will find places of employment that will both give them access to the victims and the power to cover up and mask their egregious behavior. I've seen that with COs.
Say that again, John, right? Because we need to educate parents about coaches, clergy, and other places where there is access. Please say that again about predators and where they find their prey.
Exactly. Abusers and predators, more often than not, will seek places of employment that would give them access to the victim, that would allow them to gain trust from the family members. And number 3, having the power to cover it up. So yeah, especially for parents, I know Saabir, myself, we got young kids. I'm very mindful of who my kid around, because more often than not, it's about access. These COs, they do that. A lot of them are dirty, very dirty. They're bringing, it's no different from the thing we say about police officers. Many of them, the police officers who engage in brutality, more often than not, was being bullied in high school. Now you got a badge and a gun and a little bit of authority. So you're not even right within yourself. So now you want to overplay the cards given to you. We sit it on the inside, and it's horrible. They can strip search you whenever they want to. If they feel in some kind of way, they can do it 5 times in a row. They go in your cell. They call it toss your cell when they do a cell search. And I'm like, you gonna bring this nasty dog in here, walking all on my bed and the sheets I gotta sleep in. You got on gloves, but you use those same gloves searching the person's cell next to me. So you could be bringing over disease into my cell because you're not even taking your gloves off. And they can just do that just because they want to, right? So you have to manage that. Because when Saabir said his best, when we say things like toxic masculinity, I want people to take that a step further. The environment creates these conditions to where my manhood must be respected. So you as a CEO, another man come into my space and you treat me in such a manner, what you're simply saying is I am not a man. And now, depending on where I'm at in my healing journey, how I might respond to that. I might want to show you how much of a man I am. And they get assaulted too. Right? Or we can internalize that and take it out on someone else. Or we can take it out on ourselves. So again, just the mental piece, I have to keep stressing that because again, the environment is just so, my God, the word that come to my mind is criminal, but it's so toxic. And we're forced to make the best of it because you can't really remove yourself from it. Well, you can. The last step is, and I've seen it sadly too, suicide. Attempted suicides. I've seen these things happen. It's just a horrible environment. I don't understand anybody who wants to be in that environment. Going back to CEOs, why would you even want to work in this environment if you don't have the right mindset? And don't get me wrong, there's a few that's cool, but a lot of them, they're not. That's why they don't social. Well, let me say all that. I was gonna say that's why they typically in small towns and they know to stay where they at, because if folks see them, it'll be a problem. But I want to be clear: these folks in particular, we call them super cops. Like they just so disrespectful, and I don't think they get that they put their co-workers, their fellow COs at harm's way as well. You understand what I'm saying? Like, do your job and go home. You're not the judge. You're not the executioner. Do your job. That's all you got to do. Some of them do. Some of them don't. Some of them are dirty. Some of them can be bribed. In juvenile hall, we had a thing they called a snicker contract. You know, the young person, you know, if the person in juvenile hall worked there didn't like a young person, they'll pay somebody a candy bar to come and sell and beat you up while you sleep. So all kind of stuff be happening. And these are kids. I ain't even talking about the adults. I'm talking about just within our juvenile justice system. These are still babies. You understand what I'm saying? And the idea that a grown-up entrusted by quote unquote society to be part of the process of care for young people is actually part of the process of creating harm. Physical abuse, sexual abuse, mental abuse, psychological abuse. Yeah, when Saabir mentioned the cell, they had a place, they call it the cold room. They strip you naked and put you in this room with the AC on full blast. You don't have a blanket or nothing. Just because they can. Just because they can. That's it. It's just because they can.
Audience, if you did not know why America, specifically white America, incarcerate Black people, now you know. It's called conditioning. Now, gentlemen, this has been such a magnificent, eye-opening show. We are at 4 minutes. So I know our person behind the scenes is going to be a little mad at me, but I have got to ask each one of you to tell our audience, and ask you, John, first, and then you second, Saabir. What is your organization that you are both directors of doing to help? And since we know it's more Black people incarcerated than any other group of people probably put together, John, can you sum up, and we're going to go a little bit over because we've missed sponsored breaks and everything, but you guys have definitely opened the eyes up to our audience, and specifically Black audience, because some of our many of our Black audience personnel out there, their parents aren't district attorney, police officers, judges who can sway that one person out of tens of thousands, direct their change their life. So, John, you go ahead first, and then Saabir, and then we're gonna close it out. But I have to tell you, this has been a magnificent, awesome, eye-opening show. John, please take it away.
Yeah, I'll be brief. I just want to make one quick comment before I share what Boss does. So it's just important. I want your listeners, if they don't walk away with anything else, walk away with this fact. Prisons and incarceration is legal modern day slavery. The 13th Amendment says so. Slavery is abolished except punishment of a crime for which one has been found guilty of. So we can see why there's a common parallel between who was enslaved 200 years ago and who's currently enslaved. And the treatment and all the results and implications of incarceration makes sense when we look at it through that lens. This is about slavery. It's about business. Slavery back then was economic. Incarceration is economic. So I just want to offer that. So with that being said, at Boss, we provide a number of services. So we work with folks who are on Alameda County probation. And we help them, we assess what the barriers and needs are. We connect them with employment opportunities. There's job training and job readiness programs. And we also assist with housing. We also have a program that helps folks who ever been in state prison. If you've ever been incarcerated in a California state prison, there is a funding program that will provide assistance for folks who, if you want to move into your own place, pay for the security deposit, first month rent. If you are behind on your rent or behind on bills, if you're trying to get your credit together, because keep in mind, being incarcerated, it does destabilize your life, right? You won't have the ability to pay your bills when you're locked up. This program will take care of that. It will also take care of this reality too. So more often than not, everyone is not in a position to have independent living, mainly because the rent is so high. So this program will also provide a financial assistance for family members and loved ones. Because we know when you take on someone to live with you, you're also incurring that additional cost as it relates to food, PG&E, et cetera, et cetera. And the last thing I would say is this, because the name of the organization is Building Opportunities for Self-Sufficiency. The name of the game is to become self-sufficient. We're there to assist. But again, to me, life is about power and empowerment. How do we help people discover and tap into their own power? By connecting them with programs and services, but most importantly for us, having that real life experience. I say in closing, anyone who ever walked through any boss facility, I made it clear to the staff I supervise, you are to receive them with the same level of respect and care as if that was me, because that was me. And when I was homeless and unemployed, part of that reason why, because people who were supposed to do their job to connect me with jobs wasn't doing it. You understand what I'm saying? And you don't understand how valuable that is, how powerful it is when we hold the power, the means to help people become self-sufficient. So say what you mean what you say. Do not overpromise, right? If you're going to do something, do it. If you can't do it, be clear. But do not, I'm going to say this last thing, so important. I think one of the most dangerous things we can do to a person who is experiencing hopelessness is to aspire a sense of hope that we just turn around and fail them on. I'm saying it again. The most dangerous thing we can do to someone who is experiencing deep hopelessness is to come with a false source of hope, meaning, oh, you need a place to stay? You can come crash for the weekend. And I've been sleeping on the streets. So now I'm knocking your door Friday and you treat me like no disrespect, like I'm a Jehovah's Witnesses. You understand what I'm saying? Don't do that to people. Don't, because you never know how many times people have been let down. I don't want to be the next person in that chain of letdowns. We might be the first or the first person in a long time to be like, no, I see you. What it is I can do to help you. I am paid to help you. I'm going to treat you with all the respect and dignity that you deserve as a human being. That is not taken away from you based on your circumstances. You earn that simply by being born. Simply by being born, you warrant everything that everyone deserves. And that has to be the mindset as well, to help people become self-sufficient. Because as Saabir and myself share, we have people who had that trust in us. I mean, we don't hold these director titles for nothing. They're not just paper titles that we just gave ourselves. Somebody had enough of a sense of trust and belief in us. And same with you. So I want to say, Doug and Dr. Ashley, thank you too. It's a pleasure to be on the show because it's not easy to share these experiences, but we feel safe. We know that you're creating this platform because it's really going to help others. We want to help our people understand those experiences. It's not meant to be used to create more draconian laws and policies. Some spaces we hear this information like, oh, that's why we need to give everybody life in prison, as opposed to understanding root causes and really what's true solutions. So I want to thank you all again.
Thank you.
Saabir, close us out.
Oh man, that was just powerful, man. I'm always in awe and respect for my brother John Jones III. You know, I couldn't see anyone better in that position to do the work that needs to be done. He is so eloquent in expressing the need as well as the desire, the passion to go into the work that needs to be done for folks that need help. I think I'll say social oppression, systemic oppression. All violence is state violence. You know, it's very critical to understand history. The same conditions that's happening in our prisons is happening in society. Let's connect those things, right? John was talking about the youth that had that snicker, the snicker thing that the officers would do to get someone beat up. On an adult level, now remember, COINTELPRO, right? Trying to destroy the Black Panther Party. Yeah, they do that on an adult level. Because what happened when you get some of the greatest artists I've never seen in my life, the greatest poets, the greatest rappers, the greatest singers, you know, the greatest dancers, the greatest fighters, strategists that I didn't ever been around, were in prison. So what happens when that person changes his life around? And then you become a victim to the state, right? You become a victim of the state, right? Because now, what happened to Stanley Tookie Williams? Changed his life around. You know, how many times was he up for the Nobel Peace Prize for writing children's books? The founder of Crips, right? But then they could not let that man live. they had to, and it was all type of wrong things about his conviction. You know what I mean? Let alone but not to get into that, but as an example, he would be the example So the system will try to destroy you once you learn something. I can't tell you how many times they try to set me up before I came home. You know, because remember, I didn't got like 5 other people released when I was incarcerated too that had life sentences. I started a self-help program called Rehabilitation for Success, and there was a lot of things happening. They don't want these people released. You know what I'm saying? So getting back to what's happening in prison, what's happening in society on an adult level, just like the state provided crack cocaine and AK-47s in my neighborhood, in all of our neighborhoods, these are the same officers giving crack cocaine, weed, phones to prisoners to continue violence. You see what I'm saying? Violence upon themselves and violence upon that's going to eventually, well, why I use the word returning citizens is because these people are returning to society. If we don't take care to understand what that means and invest in that return, then we're just getting, you know, harsher, more violent, more criminalistic people back in society. So that's what I would like folks to understand. You know what I'm saying? That the system is the same. You know what I'm saying? With everything that happens in society is happening inside that institution. It's just on a very small level, and there's no escaping it. Out here, you can act like it don't exist, and there you can act like nothing exists. If it's going down, it's right in your face, and you can't do nothing about it. So I work with East Bay Alliance for Sustainable Economy. At East Bay Alliance for Sustainable Economy, I'm the director of the Faith Alliance for a More Economy, which is the initiative. That initiative engages clergy, faith leaders, interfaith of all denominations and creeds to stand in solidarity with E-Base's campaigns, which typically are worker justice campaigns. What that looks like is raising the floor for our most disadvantaged workers, Black and brown workers, to have a voice on the job, meaning that if they are trying to unionize, we support unionizing workers. You know, it is proven fact that those who have a union get paid at least 10 times more than those who do not have a union. And also have better treatment, disciplinary policies, and a chance to fight back against discriminatory practices that a lot of Black and brown communities are facing. So we want to lift the floor at E-Base. We're a policy organization. And so when you look at the Oakland minimum wage increase, that was my organization. You look at Department of Workforce Employment Standards, we put that on the ballot, as well as advocated for the department's heads and stuff like that to be hired. And we also are really critical in any development that come into the city of Oakland for a community benefits agreement. We want to ensure that the most disinvested communities, those who are historically been pushed out of the job market, have opportunities at employment, and primarily formerly incarcerated folks. We want to ensure that any development happen, have an operation jobs policy piece connected to it, not just the construction piece. We want that too. We want folks who are formerly incarcerated to have access at construction jobs and get training, workforce development training and stuff like that, MC3 training, you know, for whatever that may be, electricians, carpenters, whatever, you know, get that, right? But we also know that there's a whole nother element that just need a boost up, right? There's a whole nother element that need an operation job. You see what I'm saying? A job that after all this development happens, somebody has to be employed to run these things. And it can be 15, 10 years down the line. So we work to ensure policy is in place and negotiate with policy with decision makers and developers to ensure that there's opportunity for the most disadvantaged community members and in the impacted area and citywide, so that formerly incarcerated people have job opportunities. And that's what we do at the East Bay Alliance for Sustainable Economy. And I'll also run monthly meetings of a group that's called it's part of FAME, and it's the Economic Justice for Black Oakland, where we are centering Black workers. What is the Black worker struggle and job access? You know what I'm saying? Because again, it may not be a union. It may be folks that's working in an establishment and they're just trying to get sick leave. You know what I'm saying? Like, what does all the level of employment for the holistic approach to Black workers look like, right? And it ain't just the job, but it's healthcare, it's childcare, is upward mobility, is a lot of other factors. You know, it's education. You know, what are all the impacts of the Black worker, and how do we raise that floor? so that folks are more stable and have better opportunities for their life.
Audience, I know we went over it, so I'm going to close it out. But John Arthur Jones III, director at Boss, and my other brother, Saabir Lockett, who I met working on the district attorney 4 years ago, trying to change those people in positions who put people who are on this panel here in jail, many of us. You are most welcome back on the show. We're going to get you back because, audience, I don't know about you, but I've learned so much today. I'm going to watch this show a few more times tonight. Dr. Ashley, thank you for your mental fortitude and articulating how our people, and audience, let's be perfectly clear. There are more Black people, as you have heard, and statistics show, that are in and locked up, and it is a continuation of slavery, and the white man knows it. To that end, thank you, audience, for tuning in, and remember, together, we can listen, we can learn, and we can share, because I know you care. This is Doug Blacksher and Dr. Ashley, tenured Doctor of Psychology at University of the West, from the Black Business Roundtable. God bless. Thank you, John. Thank you, Saabir. This was worth. I could have won another couple of, I don't know about you, Dr. Ash. I could have won a couple of hours. We need you to come back. And good night. See you next week.